I don't think we've seen the last of Sukuna, to be honest, so let's talk about it. But spoilers for JJK 268. So as we know, Yuji picks up what's left of Sukuna's amorphous blob form and offers him one more time this chance at mercy and compassion, right? This chance to let's run it back one more time, except this time you'll have somebody by your side, Sukuna, me. I'm willing to make that sacrifice. I will be that person for you. So let's run it back, right? Sukuna again turns this down, just like he did when Yuji offered him mercy within the domain expansion, right? Saying that, like, hey, I admire you for keeping this up, Yuji, but I am a curse. And we see him kind of evaporating away. But even though Sukuna essentially turned this down, I don't think Yuji's going to give him the choice. I don't think Yuji is actually giving him agency here. I think Yuji is going to kind of force this upon him. So I do think Yuji will have ingested the fingers or whatever, the mechanism might be to get Sukuna imprisoned within him again and live out the rest of his days with Sukuna, kind of giving him this second glimpse at life through him. Now, will Sukuna effectively be molded by this at all? That's hard to say, but I don't think Yuji just let him die here. Because again, I think this is the culmination of the entire like moral and philosophical arc that Gege has been weaving for this entire manga, right? We have seen it through Yuji. That has been our lens of main character growth and ideals that have been shaped, right? Yuji's understanding that, hey, it doesn't matter what role you're born with or what role you think you need to play in this world. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how you die. Everyone has inherent value, and we're all kind of born into this world shouldering curses, and what becomes of us is largely just luck, right? We're a product of our environments and our circumstances. And in my case, I had my grandfather. Sukuna, you didn't have anybody, so this time we're going to run it back, but you're going to have me. And I feel like that lesson only really gets fulfilled and rings true if Yuji actually follows through on this. If Sukuna just cash out, then it doesn't really have the same punchiness. So I think Yuji will force this upon Sukuna, which also completely fulfills the one to teach you about love. I think we can all agree that it's clearly Yuji that line has been in reference to, but really this act right here is what makes that really hit home. The fact that Yuji, despite everything, even despite Sukuna not wanting it, is going to do this for him. This would also fulfill what Gege established back in chapter 236 with the whole north versus south thing. If you want to become somebody new, go north. If you'd like to return to who you once were, go south. Sukuna has repeatedly tried to choose south, right? But Yuji is going to force him to try the path north. Now, I know there's only 3 chapters left, so I'm not saying that like there's going to be some, final act huge twist where Sukuna once again breaks free from Yuji since Yuji let him live or anything like that. I think this mainly just works from the fact that we know it happened at all. The fact that Yuji is going to be carrying Sukuna for the rest of his life. And I think this also works as a really great way to leave that up to the reader's interpretation if Gege does nothing else with this series. So more on that in a second though. It's left up to each and every one of us to decide how might Sukuna shift over the course of Yuji's mortal life, if at all. Does he ever, concede a little bit? Does he ever see things differently, or does he remain stubborn up until the day that Yuji dies, still completely unchanged and unmolded, right? Or if Gege ever does decide to do anything else in this world, whether it's a sequel or whatever, right, then you still have Sukuna as a potential player on the chessboard, which is also interesting. But I feel like that isn't even really part of why this would be happening. I still think even regardless of potential sequels or whatever, that this just makes a lot of sense and is again just very poetic and beautiful ending to the story. And I think this would especially be a full circle type of moment because, as we know, Sukuna was alone his entire life, right? Great strength and the loneliness that it brings. It's the entire point that Yuji even brought up, right? I had my grandpa, you had nothing. This time I'm gonna be with you. And he was supposed to be a twin, but he lost his twin before they were even born. As, if you want to call it destiny, if you want to call it fate, if you want to call it whatever, but Sukuna was supposed to have a partner in crime, let's call it. There's no indication that the brothers even would have been friends, but the fact remains that he was supposed to be a twin. He was supposed to have at least that, but he didn't. And now, as we know, Yuji has the soul of his twin brother in him from Jin, right? So now the twins are reunited, reconnected once again, and are going to presumably live, if this is the case, an entire life together through Yuji as they were always have supposed to. So yeah, I don't think Sukuna's dead. I think he's living on within Yuji. But let's say he's not living on within Yuji. He wouldn't have died right here anyway. Because yes, he was evaporating and it seemed really bad, but you gotta remember that there was, at the very least, the finger at the Shiromaru Dam that Nobara hit with resonance, and there were the fingers that he threw up last chapter when Yuji punched him. So until those fingers were completely destroyed, Sukuna wouldn't technically be dead, right? So he couldn't have died in this exact moment here anyway. But of course, since we know there was a little bit of a time skip, they easily could have fully killed Sukuna by having Angel use Jacob's ladder on all the remaining fingers. So it is possible that he's truly gone, but it just wouldn't have been exactly in this moment. And again, I think he's living on within Yuji, but I would really love to hear y'all's thoughts on all of this. And then I've also gotten a few questions about Sukuna, so let's tackle those, starting with this one from the Mel. And it's a bit longer, so y'all pause to read it, but their question is, how much do you think Yuji knows about Sukuna's origins and the fact that he is his uncle? Because when we, the readers, find out that information, Yuji's obviously not there, right? So that was just a conversation between Uraume and Sukuna. So yeah, I don't think Yuji knows pretty much anything about Sukuna other than, you know, the obvious stuff that everyone in Jujutsu Tech knows, because he wouldn't be privy to that. Now, could there be some sort of weird resonance, like memory acquisition situation that happens eventually? Sure. But at this point, no. I don't think he knows that Sukuna is, in a weird way, his uncle. I don't think he knows that his father was the reincarnation of Sukuna's twin brother. I don't think he knows anything about Sukuna's, like, life and how he grew up. And I think that honestly makes his choice to show Sukuna mercy and compassion that much better. Like, and better's the wrong word, but that much more, like, honorable and empathetic, right? Because all he knows about Sukuna is stuff that should make him hate him. And we know that Yuji does hate him, but even in spite of that, he's still willing to offer him this second chance, for lack of a better word. So yeah, I don't think Yuji really knows any of that, but if Sukuna is indeed living on within him, then perhaps he will find out about some of those things. Next up, we've got a quick question and a couple similar ones here, so I grouped these together. But first up, from Hurt in the middle, it says, the most recent volume was named Inhuman Makyo Shinjuku Showdown 9 Principles. Any idea what this could mean? Yeah, so the way that they name the volumes is based on the final chapter that's in the volume. So this would have been whatever the final chapter was in that volume. And I'm not sure which one you're talking about. Maybe it's the new Yuta one, or perhaps the one before it. But in any case, that's what it means. So as you'll know, a lot of the chapters in this final arc have been named this, which is essentially just like the battle going on in the demon-infested Shinjuku. And then from Blackbird here, and also Dim Ninjas. I'm leaving this in. Your boy can't read, so, you know, JJK fans, we all got something in common. But he said, or they both referenced the fact that Sukuna actually calls Yuji by his name in those final moments. As you can see here, he says, I'm impressed you take this farce so far, Itadori Yuji. So I absolutely love this because first, yes, Yuji is getting the recognition. He has arrived. The King of Curses has said his name, which as we know is a sign of massive respect. He did the same thing to Gojo, right? At the end of their fight. But what I also love about this is there's kind of like this twinge to it, because the reason Sukuna is impressed isn't because he's lost in this moment. It's because he thinks Yuji is lying about this whole like mercy and compassion, right? Sukuna cannot even like fathom that. So he said, man, I'm impressed that you're taking this BS this far, Yuji. So he must think there's like some other angle to it. And as we know, there's not. But I love that like that's kind of why, or at least it's part of the reason why he's finally acknowledging him here. Next up, M. Ivory says, so do the last fingers not house Sukuna anymore? And I touched on this a little bit earlier in the video, but at the very least, the one in the dam does, because that's a cursed object and Nobara didn't destroy it, right? But like Megumi mentioned in this chapter, if that's the only one that's left, then it might not be enough to tie Sukuna's soul to it. The fingers that we saw Sukuna throw up may or may not actually be cursed objects, considering what Megumi said about like you have to take special care to create a cursed object. And since those weren't the literal fingers that Yuji ate, because instead Megumi got turned by Yuji's pinky, So what those fingers exactly represent is hard to say. They may be official cursed objects, they may not be, but in any case, like I mentioned, they would still exist unless, Angel destroyed them with her technique. And then for your other questions of, do you think Megami called off the merger and what happened to Tengen? And no, I don't think Megami called off the merger because he doesn't have the authority to do that. Basically, the way Kenjaku set it up, no one can really just straight up end the culling games. Megami has the authority to start the merger, but not to just, erase it and call it off, I don't think. So it'll be interesting to see if we get any more touched on in these final 3 chapters about what exactly they're going to do about the culling games, if anything, right? And then as far as what happened to Tengen, great question. I guess my best guess right now would be that he's still technically inside of Megami, but I don't know. And then finally for this video, we've got this theory from Sonic on this kind of very subject about the culling game. So y'all pause to read the whole thing, but he essentially says Megami should have a bunch of points thanks to Sukuna in the culling games, right? So he thinks he'll either use those to save Yuta somehow, to end the culling game somehow, or 3, find a way to use the culling games and everything Kenjaku had set up to, instead of merging everyone with Tengen, instead turn everyone into sorcerers, aka Yuki's plan for ridding the world of curses, right? As opposed to Geto's plan of getting rid of all of the non-sorcerers, instead making everyone a sorcerer. So, Megami does technically have some points here, so he could do something. And like I just mentioned, the culling games, as we understand it right now, are still going on. So I imagine, maybe they'll be trying to think of a way to at least get that to like a nice little status quo, even if they can't fully end it. I'm not sure how a new rule would help to save Yuta, but I'm not saying that's impossible, because we still don't really know what's going on with Yuta. I'll probably make another video on that soon. And I don't think he could end the games with points, because Kenjaku specifically set it up to where like that should be impossible. Now, is there a loophole around that they could figure something out? Sure, but I don't think it would just be like the games are now officially over. I think it would more so be like some sort of indefinite stalemate situation or something like that. And then for the third way, that would be a really interesting ending to the series. So I could see something like that, especially with the way they teased it, and then we would kind of get the merger, but not really in the way that, Kenjaku wanted to see it. So, 3 chapters left. Will these things get touched on? Maybe, maybe not, but they're definitely interesting questions. Anyways, y'all, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you guys so much for sending in your questions and support. But finally, I am going to be streaming again today. It's been so much fun the past couple days. Plus, we got to get back in there and finish the game we started yesterday called Ugly. So if you're watching this video on Saturday, the day I put it out, this is me over on Twitch. I might be live right now, so come chill. And hopefully I don't embarrass myself as much as I did yesterday on some of those boss fights. So anyways, y'all, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.